Hello and welcome. I'm Kath, Deputy Festival Director for the Festival of Education. In this episode, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with our keynote speaker, award-winning comedian, writer, and passionate advocate for inclusion, Francesca Martinez. Francesca brought the house down at this year's festival with her brilliant humour, powerful insights, and raw honesty. In our conversation, we explore her personal journey through the education system, the importance of embracing difference, and what needs to change to make schools truly inclusive. I loved your set to teachers, and I loved how you just picked on teachers in the audience, made them feel really uncomfortable and made them laugh, but actually made a really good point. So I'm joking when I said you made them feel uncomfortable, but it was playing with those boundaries, wasn't it, between discomfort and making people really think. So how was it for you?
Yeah, well, I loved it. They were a great crowd, and the former wobbly pupil who had a very hard time at high school, it was quite cathartic to talk to a room of teachers and educators, and they were a really good audience. And as you say, comedy is great because it really allows you to make quite serious points without appearing preachy or boring. So I see it as a kind of Trojan horse that allows me to actually say what I really feel and hopefully use comedy to challenge attitudes and assumptions and norms. And I think in the realm of education, when it comes to disability and inclusion, there's still quite a long way to go. So it was really great to do both the keynote speech and then to host a panel with the 4 disabled students who were really eloquent and really passionate. And I hope that teachers and professionals found that useful. I really hope that it can be the start of a conversation. Like I said in the panel, I think there's no simple, easy answer for how to structure a truly inclusive education system. It's more about an approach and a willingness to learn. And we're going to make mistakes and we're going to get things wrong, but that's okay. The important thing is that there is that true desire to get it right and to listen to the students and realize that although it might challenge the traditional teacher-student power dynamic in this realm, I think we have to listen to the kids and we have to concede that they are expert in what they need.
One of the things that stood out to me was when you asked the students, you were kind of digging into it with several questions, and what it seemed that they all agreed on was the 3 of them who'd been to special school had a really positive experience of special school. But actually all 4 of them would have liked mainstream schools to be more inclusive and actually allow them the chance to be in a mainstream school with adaptations, which sometimes they said weren't that difficult.
I know, I was quite shocked to hear how little support 2 of them got in mainstream education, because I was at high school in the 90s. I'm old, spoiler alert. But they were relating the same sorts of experiences that I went through. So that was a bit disappointing to hear the lack of progress over the decades. But yeah, as you say, it was great to hear such universal praise for the specialist school system. But I think all of us who are different in some way, I think we would ideally like to see an education system which, even if it's not fully integrated, could have specialist and mainstream schools side by side, so that kids of all abilities and all ages are integrated and are exposed to human diversity from early on. Because I'm a true believer that it's much more it's much easier to create a fully inclusive, accepting, diverse society if you start young. So if people grow up, like my brother, for example, my brother is younger than me. He's the only person in my life who's known me all their life. And to him, I'm normal. So when he was at school, his friend used to say, "Why does your sister talk funny?" And he would say, "What do you mean?" Because, of course, it was normal to him. And I think that really illustrates that if kids grow up alongside difference from a young age, they just accept it as part of humanity, as part of normality. And I think that's a very beautiful goal to aspire to have kids side by side. That's not to say that we ignore difference or we don't cater for special needs, but we need to realize that society needs exposure to difference. And if we keep people separate until they're 18, we don't normalize diversity. So it's a lot harder. It's almost like learning a language. It's easy when you're a kid, but it gets harder as you age. And I think there's a real parallel with disability. So my kind of Martin Luther King dream would be that we have kids of all abilities educated side by side from day one, not only for the benefit of disabled people feeling fully part of society and not segregated, but also I believe that exposure to diversity benefits everybody. I think it makes you grow, it makes you mature. In my talk today, I talked about how being wobbly has made me happier because I've had to question a lot of the toxic ideals within society, the emphasis on superficiality, on body image, on aspirational images that are impossible to live up to. Now, because I knew I could never fit those so-called ideals, I totally rejected them. And of course, that is the answer to everybody. We all need to reject them. So I guess it's a very long-winded answer of saying I think there are truly valuable lessons learned from human diversity. And I think kids who grow up with difference, they do develop maturity. They do develop deeper understanding. They do develop skills that will actually be useful in their adult life. And I don't think we hear about the positives to disability enough. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, we need to support people adequately. But you know what? Different than disability also brings amazing, unique positives. Like my family, for example, we're closer than we would be if I wasn't wobbly because I need physical help. So my brother is my best friend because he's toured the world with me because I couldn't tour on my own. So I always want to emphasize that disability is a complex thing, but we shouldn't remember that it can also really bring beautiful, positive aspects into society as well. And I think education can be really enhanced by realizing this and by allowing all students to kind of, I guess, benefit from the beauty of diversity and hopefully learn to embrace their own bodies as a counterpoint to this culture that makes people hate themselves. I would like to think that actually being around disability gives you a broader perspective and maybe a greater appreciation for what your body can do.
Francesca, you've had mixed experience of schools, and so did the young people on the panel. So what can schools do to be more inclusive?
The attitude of my school, because I think I was the only wobbly girl in the whole place. So I think they were underprepared, they were inexperienced, and I think they panicked a bit. They're also quite liberal, and I think they thought, oh, the progressive thing to do would be to treat her exactly the same as everyone else. And that's why they made me do sports and table tennis, which actually I call picking the ball off the floor. So, I mean, it sounds kind of comic or mad when I relate it now, but yeah, there was that real attitude of make her do what everyone else is doing. And of course, we know that inclusivity is actually about acknowledging difference and trying to make every child feel seen and heard and valued for what they have to offer. So I think they're very inflexible, and maybe because it challenged the traditional power dynamic between student and teacher. It's like, no, this was a scenario where actually you had to be guided by me, but I don't think the trust was there. I don't think they trusted me.
That came over in quite a few of the students. They talked about the importance of teachers listening to them, didn't they?
Yeah, and it sounds like the basic thing, doesn't it? But I think Amber was talking about the lack of just clear, open channels of communication. And she spoke about a single example where the teacher of hers made her feel included. And I think she didn't have a wheelchair, so Amber was put in an office chair and rolled around. And you could see what an impact that had, that one example on Amber. And it was quite touching, really, but I understand that it stood out because those moments, it's not about if the solution is perfect or imperfect. It's about a teacher showing the willingness to make you feel included in a way that you can be. And it sounds less frequent than it should be.
Students were also saying, weren't they, that just small changes can make the biggest difference.
Well, I know Tyler was saying that he would really appreciate like a room, a little space where he could go and take some time out from the busyness of school and just maybe, calm down and do some deep breathing and have that peace. And I thought, wow, that's such an easy thing to arrange. And this is what I mean. The students need to guide there. And the thing is, disability, because it's so varied, I can't tell you what someone like Tyler needs, or what Ella needs, or what Amber needs, or what Kayla needs. I have no idea. I can tell you what I need as a wobbly woman, but that's the thing with disability. It's so varied, and it takes imagination. And even someone like myself who has a disability, I have no idea what a blind student is going to need or a deaf student. So I think we need to start from a position of humility as educators, and we need to say, look, the honest truth is we are willing and open to learn, but we don't know. We have to learn by working with the student. And I also think like inclusion isn't an end point. I think it's an ongoing process. It's more of an approach, isn't it? Like a willingness to say, we want to make this work. We will make mistakes and we will get it wrong. But I think people are very patient and they don't mind if it's imperfect. What they mind is when there's a real lack of effort. Like Caitlin and Tyler were saying when they were in mainstream schools, their conditions were completely ignored. So Tyler just, I think, got totally left behind and probably felt very embarrassed and ashamed that he couldn't read well. And Caitlin did too. And yet when they were moved into a more supportive environment, they both thrived.
Yeah. But they both said, didn't they? They would have liked to make mainstream work. And as you said, Tyler was saying that the time out we're in would have really helped him. I know that Caitlin was saying that she needed a lot more specialist support with her reading earlier on. She needed that to be recognised. And so I think with the government wanting to make mainstream schools more inclusive, I think a lot of people are asking kind of what will it take and how do we actually support mainstream schools to be more inclusive? Because we also need the resources, don't we?
Well,
you need the time, you need the more staff.
I think that taps into a wider issue, which is the education budget is continually being cut. Teachers are under more and more pressure, more underfunding. They're very overstressed. We have loads of teachers leading the profession. So we're in a situation where even able-bodied students aren't often getting the time or attention or resources that they need because of the lack of funding and the lack of staff. So if you then add disability into the mix, you're going to be in trouble because the thing about disability is it demands funding, it demands resources, it demands extra staff. I know when I was at school, I was given support teachers who weren't always ideal for me, but I appreciate that I was given them. And I hear nowadays it's incredibly hard to get support assistance. And it makes you think, my God, we're almost going backwards in some way where we should be progressing forward. So I think this touches upon a wider issue, which is like the undervaluing of teachers and the education profession. And let's face it, the education system is the foundation of a civilized, a thriving society. And if you're not willing to invest in it, then I think we're all going to suffer the effect as a society. So yes, while this is a kind of more focused issue, I think zooming out and realizing that actually it's part of the wider shift to maybe create that two-tier education system where, you know, those who can pay get a good schooling and those who can't. I think that's a very depressing scenario, and everyone in the education sector, along with the general public, I think we really need to challenge this shift and remind our governments that we want to invest in the future. And as one of the richest countries in the world, we should be leading the way in inclusive education. So this is about priority. It's not about money. There's always money for war. There's always money for defense budget and corporate welfare. But we want to say invest in the future and invest in people and invest in society, because education is such an important human right and it can really define your whole life, the level of education that you get. So it's a really crucial issue at the moment, I think.
So Francesca, you had mixed experiences of teaching assistants. Do you want to tell us a bit what it was like for you?
Yeah, I think that the act of receiving help and being helped and supported is a very intimate one. And as a teenager, it's difficult to realize that you need extra help. You want to be super independent, you want to be like everyone else. So if someone isn't particularly sensitive to that, or if they're kind of using their position to wield power over you, it can feel very difficult. Like, one of my support teachers would tell me off if I swore. And I used to say to her, but I'm a teenager. No other teenager has, like, that. No one else has, like, a grandma following them about and telling them what they can and can't say. I thought it was totally unfair that I was policed by a rather strict, austere older person. But when I went to my school and said, look, I really don't feel comfortable with this person, they said to me, oh, well, we really like her, so you'll start with her. So it got to the point where she would come in 2 days a week and we wouldn't speak. She'd just sit there. And that went on for quite a while. And then eventually, I think she got the message and she left. And then they gave me another person who was a mother of one of my classmates. And of course, that was a very tricky situation to navigate and very uncomfortable, and I think very inappropriate. So that was really challenging, and that got to the point where I just said, look, I don't want any help. So one of the ways they'd help me was to carry my bag and my computer around the school. So I said, look, I'd rather do that myself. So I would be carrying all this heavy baggage every day. And it was really difficult to do, up and down loads of stairs. But I just felt like my pride was such that I didn't want to accept help from someone who treated me badly, because I felt there was an awful dynamic going on where she treated me badly and like patronized me and was really mean. But yeah, I had to ask her for help, and I was like, I would rather die than ask you for help. So eventually she went, and then third time lucky, I was assigned a lovely woman called Carol Colton, who I remained friends with for many years. And she was just brilliant. She's like a friend, and she was like, look, I'm here, I'm not your hands, I'm here to do what you can't do, so just you let me know when you need me. And there was no kind of ego, there was no power game, and it was a joy to be with her. She's like an extra friend. I say extra, I had no friend. She was my one friend. And I feel truly grateful, like it gave me an idea of, this is how it's meant to work, because she was so sensitive and she truly just wanted to make my life better. And she really did. So that was, I think it was really great I got to experience a positive support teacher, because up until her, I was like, I would rather die than let you guys help me.
Yeah, what a lovely story to end on, to have a positive story of your school experience.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to teachers and educators, and it's been very cathartic.
I'm glad. Really glad you got to say all the things you wanted to at school.
Like therapy, but I didn't have to pay.
Well, we're really glad we could be for people.
Yeah, thank God. Thank you for letting me deal with some of my anger issues in a productive way.
I'd like to finish by saying a huge thank you to Francesca Martinez for sharing her story with us. Conversations like this remind us why the Festival of Education exists: to challenge, bring people together, and create space for voices that need to be heard. If you enjoyed this episode, please do like, share and subscribe. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.